You ever have one of those mornings where you just want to sit on your porch, sip your coffee, and let the day roll in easy? And then suddenly you're watching the self-declared queen of your neighborhood shrieking at your lawn like she's discovered the Rosetta Stone buried under your grass. That's how it all started for me right here in Pine Ridge Commons. I'm talking about Patricia Hawthorne, the HOA president, the woman with a color-coded binder for every occasion, and the temperament of a game show buzzer. She was out there waving a measuring tape in one hand and some weird crayon map in the other, pointing at my freshly cut lawn and yelling, "This is HOA property. You've stolen community land with your illegal mowing activities." Her voice carried all the way across 3 backyards. Mr. Peterson, 2 doors down, already had his phone out recording like it was Sunday night TV. I just stood on my porch, coffee in hand, watching Patricia stomp up and down, hair-perfect, face red, and honestly, I almost choked on my coffee when she accused me of grand theft grass. You know what I mean? And I'll admit, by that point, I'd collected a dozen or so violation notices from her in my 3 years here. Bird feeder, too busy, decorative rocks, too suspicious, mailbox, wasn't beige enough, garden gnome facing east instead of west. She fined my neighbor $50 for that one. She even had an opinion on the angle of my wind chimes. But see, what Patricia didn't know and what made this whole thing sweet was that I'm not just another homeowner on her hit list. I run a little real estate business on the side, picked up a few rental units around the neighborhood, including the very duplex at the end of our street, Unit B. Guess who moved into Unit B about 2 years ago? That's right, Patricia herself. You can probably see where this is headed, but trust me, it gets better. So there she was, threatening to call the cops for theft of community property. I set my coffee down, strolled out, and maybe it was a little petty, asked her real nice if she still lived at Unit B of the Maple Street duplex. She looked at me like I'd just asked her to recite pi backward. What does that have to do with anything? She snapped. I just smiled. "Oh, nothing. Just making sure I've got the right address for my records." I could see the gears turning in her head that look people get when they realize the math isn't mathing. She paused suddenly, a little less sure of herself. "What records?" she asked. "Property management records," I said, "for the rental properties I own." And then, because sometimes karma writes your lines for you, I added, "By the way, your rent check for this month hasn't cleared yet. Just a heads up." Her face went whiter than my mailbox regulation beige, "Thank you very much." I swear the measuring tape fell out of her hand like she'd touched a live wire. She started sputtering, "You don't own my house." "But I just pulled up the deed on my phone technology. It's a beautiful thing." "Want to see the lease you signed?" I asked, trying not to look too pleased with myself. Or maybe the emails about the last rent increase. It was almost sad, honestly. Almost. Now, by this point, we had an audience. The jogger who passes by every morning stopped pretending to stretch and just straight up stared. Mr. Peterson's wife joined in curtains, twitching up and down the block. Patricia tried to regain her footing, insisting the HOA owned the land and she had official maps to prove it. Drawn by whom, I asked. She looked like a fish out of water. "The city surveyor says otherwise," I told her, waving my own property survey PDF signed and sealed. "You're standing 18 inches into my land right now, Patricia, so if anyone's trespassing..." She looked down at her feet as if she could will the ground to swallow her. But the best part, I'd been talking to the city planning department for a week about the HOA's little habit of collecting maintenance fees for land they don't own. Turns out Patricia's creative cartography had raked in money from homeowners for years. When I mentioned that her clipboard nearly went airborne, papers flying down the block like it was confetti at her own parade of doom, I told her straight up, check the county records. It's all there. And if she wanted to bring lawyers into it, well, she could talk to mine. She left my yard that day with her pride in tatters, her clipboard empty, and her rent officially late. Over the next few days, things got interesting. Patricia went into overdrive, calling my property management company so many times she didn't realize she was leaving voicemails on my own business line, each one sounding more frantic than the last. She tried rallying the HOA board, but turns out her iron grip had rubbed a lot of folks raw. Nobody wanted to show up for her emergency meeting. She even tried to run a meeting without a quorum, which is, as she herself would say, against Section 4, Paragraph C of the bylaws. Then I got a legal notice from her lawyer who, after a little Googling, turned out to be her cousin from out of state, who sells insurance and probably can't even spell injunction. My actual attorney sent a cease and desist that must have landed hard because suddenly the threats dried up. But here's the twist. My little chat with the city triggered an audit of the HOA's books and property claims. The city found Patricia had been claiming slivers of 5 other properties, plus a drainage easement that belonged to the city itself. The HOA got hit with a $30,000 fine for fraud and improper fee collection. That emergency meeting finally happened, but this time it was called by the treasurer, Harold, a guy whose hands shook so much with the financials I thought his glasses would fall off. Neighbors came out of the woodwork with stories. Patricia fined one for roses being too pink measured. Another's grass, weekly, made a father scrub chalk art off his driveway because it lowered property values. It was like group therapy, but with more pitchfork energy. The whole neighborhood was sick of her, and the mood was hungry for justice. That's when Harold dropped the bomb. If they didn't sort this out, the HOA was facing bankruptcy and might be dissolved entirely. Patricia tried to pin it all on me. If he hadn't started trouble, none of this would have happened, but my lawyer shut that down quick. He stood up and laid it out for the record. Patricia had trespassed, accused me of theft, and the HOA's dirty laundry was getting aired because of facts, not spite. Then he slid a folder across the table, my notice to Patricia for harassment, disturbing the peace, and not paying rent. I was willing to let the rent slide if she'd resign immediately and issue a written apology. The place erupted. Neighbors clapped, cheered, even Mr. Peterson's wife started crying a little. Patricia cycled through about 6 emotions in 30 seconds before spitting out, "Fine, I resign." She looked like someone had yanked her batteries out. But Harold wasn't finished. Turns out the city prosecutor was looking at fraud charges for Patricia, collecting fees for land the HOA never owned, signing off on all those assessments. Suddenly, Patricia was scrambling her chair, falling back as she made a beeline for the exit, hissing at me. "You ruined everything. All I said, honest to God, was no. You did this to yourself. All I did was mow my own lawn." That was the last time I saw her at a meeting. Within a week, she'd moved out, no forwarding address, 2 months' rent unpaid, but honestly, I let it go. The pure entertainment value was worth every penny. Someone said they saw her picking up trash in an orange vest along the highway, but who knows, maybe she finally found an audience that appreciates her attention to detail. The HOA survived barely. New board, new rules, actual focus on common areas instead of terrorizing homeowners. They even sent me a letter apologizing for the property line debacle, if you can believe it. Life here got quieter, easier. The young couple who moved into Patricia's old unit always pays their rent on time and never once tried to measure my grass. And some mornings when the sun hits that little strip of lawn just right, I stand on my porch, coffee in hand, and remember how 18 inches of grass toppled a dictator. Patricia learned the hard way: before you accuse someone of stealing land, maybe check if they're your landlord first. The $15,000 or $1,000 fine and those 300 hours of community service, just a little poetic justice. Sometimes you really do reap what you sow, especially if you're sowing chaos on borrowed land. So what do you think? Was I out of line, or did justice finally win one in suburbia? Drop a comment. Let's hear where you land on HOA drama karma and the wild things neighbors do for a patch of grass.